So we are going to do another Law and Order video, specifically talking about police accountability, as well as a confession from one of the top cops in this nation. And some of this video is difficult to watch, so warning in advance. The first article we have here, by the way, all these stories are from this month. And Jason, you were just mentioning, like, holy cow, this is happening not on a long time frame, but this is happening a lot more than we think. And of course, we don't see the national media, we don't see the mainstream media, we don't see the establishment media talking about any of these incidences, but there's plenty. The first one here was, of course, Jason, the first one I have lined up is, of course, the graphic video that shows two cops beating a woman with a baton and fist over a traffic stop. Now, obviously, this incident happened in Alabama. There's only video of the beating, so we don't know what happened before or after. But I could tell you, we're not going to show the graphic footage here, but I could tell you, looking at the graphic footage, excessive force was definitely used here. But now it's going to be, the person who was beat up, the perp, and the officers in in the law of court, in the law of order. We're literally now, most likely, a judge is going to believe a police officer because there is no video footage exactly showing you what happened here. And video footage is extremely, extremely important, Jason, as I want you to introduce the next clip, which showed us through body cameras just insane, shocking behavior that really, really, really makes you concerned about people who are trigger happy and have never had the proper firearms training. And a lot of those individuals are sadly police officers in this country. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, we're watching this clip right here. I turned the audio off, but you can just listen to it. They just says, make himself known.
If anybody's in the residence, make yourself known now. Lynchburg Police, if you're in the residence, make yourself known.
And that's it. I mean, this guy, he wasn't even going to be charged with anything. They're in the wrong place. He obviously didn't pose a threat. He came to his door.
And they shot a dad. They shot a dad in the middle of the night. Imagine, just going up to your door, having police officers, and you're being shot through the door. Now, there was an actual legal proceeding in this case, and both of these officers were indicted for their actions on 3 felony counts. One was reckless handling of a firearm resulting in a serious bodily injury. The other one was unlawfully wounding and unlawful shooting at an occupied domicile. But out of 3 felony charges, these officers only got 100 hours of community service each, which many people are calling, obviously, a travesty to justice. What do you guys think? I also would love your feedback, but obviously I think these were first-time offenders. Maybe that's why the sentencing was so little. But when you're charged on 3 felonies, you usually don't get off with community service, which is important to note here, Jason.
Yeah, and by the grace of God, I guess no one lost their life, luckily. I would expect that the punishment would have been a lot harsher had this man lost his life. That's kind of just a small caveat to the story. But yeah, 100 hours of community service over the next 11 months seems like a pretty light sentence for what they did. And again, I would be more distressed by the officer that used his firearm. But how do you get to that point where... Yeah. Literally someone comes to the door and you shoot them without even seeing them?
Yeah, well, Jason, obviously a lot of police officers are under very high stress jobs, and they're not properly trained how to use their guns. And this story is even highlighted by what happened next in New Haven, Connecticut. The story that we were talking about before happened in Lynchburg, Virginia, and happened in 2018, but the legal proceedings just wrapped up now. This one happened in New Haven, Connecticut recently, and this video is even more daunting and terrifying when you really look at the larger scope of this. As a police officer, you see this man not observing any proper training, any proper behavior with, of course, a deadly weapon. He's literally just dancing around shooting what was an innocent couple that was mistaken for, and this is the crazier part, for armed robbery that never happened. Let's just try to introduce this clip, Jason.
Yeah, as we're watching it here, you're just going to see some roadside footage, and you see this red car, and it's being approached by a police car, and obviously everything is in moments. You see him
Yeah.
braking, allowing, and then all of a sudden this officer gets out of his
Wait,
car.
pause it here, Jason. Pause it here, because again, the car kind of slowed down. They see a cop approaching. The cop's lights are not on. There's no cop lights. There's no signal. There's no saying, hey, they're not fleeing the case here. They stop the car. The officer gets off, and right now what you're seeing he's reaching for his gun. Keep playing it.
Yeah, and again, I mean, all of this is happening within seconds. Seconds, folks. And he just fires into the vehicle. And thank God that they both survived that. But let's also say this, Luke. If this person had not taped that, because that was not CCTV camera footage, they would have gotten away with lying, because they said that the person who was driving the car abruptly exited the vehicle before the officer discharged his weapon. And obviously, when you watch that video, that's not what happened.
Yeah, there does deserve to be some important context here, because, again, the officer literally is flailing around, running around, shooting off his gun. That's not the proper way, one, to shoot a gun. A lot of innocent bystanders are going to be shot. There was no threat to his life. He could get out of the car, position himself against somewhere we could have a defense, be in the kind of square position and address the situation and look at the situation and offer some voice commands. There was no people with guns. Even with that other story, there was no one with a gun. There was no one threatening them. It was a rash, emotional reaction based off a high stress level situation, but it wasn't even that high level of stress, because we look at the actual details of this case. The police officers were allegedly responding to, of course, a robbery at a nearby gas station, and they stopped the vehicle, of course, the vehicle that we saw there. Both officers, again, just jumped outside, started shooting. It was an innocent couple. The couple had nothing to do with the alleged robbery of a gas station, which, of course, never even took place. And this is why it's important to film a lot of these actions, because, again, as you said, the police report said something completely different than, of course, what actually happened, because cops were covering up for themselves, just like this next story out of Tennessee that is even more gruesome, that is even more insane, where a police officer tasered another innocent man and then was talking about making up charges against him to put him in jail. Now, again, a police officer's job is risky, high stress, a lot of potential for mistakes. Mistakes do happen. But when you go into covering them up, when you go into lying, when you go and you change the record and you falsify evidence and you build up evidence that wasn't there, you are a criminal. Let's just call it for what it is. And this officer is a criminal. He even threatened to shoot this guy's dog. I mean, this is crazy. You want to talk about this a little bit, Jason?
Yeah, that's really one of the other things that bothered me about this is, the dog is in the yard and protecting his owner, and this guy isn't even the right person. And after the fact, the wife wants to know what's going to be happening to her husband and what he's being charged with. And they said disorderly and resisting arrest. And then he goes on to state, if you guys could help me make anything else up, I'd appreciate it. So I think we should play this.
Yeah.
A Chattanooga police officer mistook a man for a suspect, hitting him with a stun gun and pointing a firearm at him. That is according to a lawsuit recently filed in Hamilton County Court. Thanks for joining us. I'm Kim Chapman.
And I'm Josh Rowe. Bliss Segment spoke to the man's lawyer tonight. Bliss, what did he tell you?
Josh, Kim, attorney Robin Flores says this is another case that shows CPD officers using excessive force. He says Officer Cody Thomas assaulted and falsely arrested Nate Carter, but police reports tell a different story.
Get it over here right now.
This body cam video shows a CPD officer hitting a man with a stun gun as he walks away. Officer Cody Thomas was called to Vance Avenue on April 13th of 2018 after a neighbor called 911 saying a man named Polo was waving a gun around.
Are you Polo? What's your name?
According to the police affidavit, Officer Thomas thought Nate Carter met the suspect description.
While he's on top of him, takes his thumb and jams it into the man's area right here around the jawline. Which I suspect they're going to say is a pain compliance, but that's also what the carotid artery and the jugular vein are at.
Attorney Robin Flores says the officer's actions were unlawful. The lawsuit alleges that Officer Thomas conducted an unreasonable seizure, used excessive force, authorized a false report, and more.
So what are you charging him with? So I can tell his wife when she get here, she's going to be asking about it.
Disorderly and resisting.
And if you guys could help me think of anything else. Disorderly and resisting. He never resisted. If you watch the video, he wasn't disorderly. He walked back into his own home, or tried to, as he was stun gunned on his porch. And again, if you read, they didn't play it on the released audio there, but if you read what he said, I'll shoot your effing dog too. And I'm an animal lover, man. That really hurts. That's tough.
That dog is lucky to be alive. That situation could have escalated and been a lot worse. And luckily, we finally have video to actually see and have some accountability here, because, again, a lot of this stuff would have been just swept underneath the rug and not even talked about if it wasn't for that police body camera, which is extremely, extremely important. A lot of these people are innocent people that are getting caught up with this. Answering your door randomly, just driving down the street, this guy walking down the street, and police officers just use excessive force, to say the least, against innocent people. And this happens a lot. And this needs a spotlight on it. This needs accountability. These officers deserve to be punished for covering this up. If they make a mistake, it happens. We understand that. But they need to be held accountable when they start lying and covering this up, especially, and they need to be trained. The level of training that they received is definitely inadequate, and as you saw from the police videos, especially inadequate when it comes to firearms training. Not, of course, having the right discipline, not the right stature, the right positioning, and, of course, the right positioning to make sure that no innocent people are killed. They're just flailing around shooting everything like it's freaking a duck hunting season. And that's not how a police officer is supposed to be. I got trained for a week by friends how to, act in certain military situations. I'm still aware of how to conduct myself and how to, position my gun and how to square up and how to, hide defensively and make sure that there's no loss of innocent life for no reason at all. There's no reason why police officers can't get this same amount of training. And, again, a lot of people automatically, hear these stories and they make out like all the police departments are bad. That's not always the case. We also have another story here from the Free Thought Project that talks about how Chicago's top cop, the police superintendent, admitted recently, hey, officers do look the other way when fellow cops break the law. A huge admission that people need to realize, because what do you do? What do you do when you're the law enforcement? You're supposed to uphold people to the law, and your fellow law officer is breaking the law. Are you going to break the blue code of silence, as they call it? Are you going to, there's so much retribution against police officers who have done so, that even other agencies like the FBI had to get involved. And literally, an FBI even recently made an arrest of local police officers in New Jersey. Jason, do you want to get into any of these stories?
Well, I just want to say that, look, we know that people are inherently corrupt, especially when given power. And when they abuse that power and get away with it, they become more corrupt. So when you look at this officer, I'm glad that he's being frank and saying, yes, look, it is a problem that we have officers that look the other way. We just saw body cam footage where a man, was tasered, put to the ground, arrested for no reason, had charges made up against him, and the other officers didn't stop him and say, hey, let's cut this off right now. Let's not arrest him. Let's admit we made a mistake. Let's go to the department and figure this out. No, let's figure out other charges. That's a huge issue. And we've done other stories, our past police story where we were showing that some of these officers were running brothels, gambling operations, selling heroin, other drugs. And I think it's important, especially for the alternative media, to fairly cover these instances so that people understand they are going on and they need to be policed by us, the police, or the people, because honestly, you think Internal Affairs is going to do it? You think the FBI is going to do it? You don't think they're corrupt as well? No, it's up to citizens taking them to task when they perform these abuses that we're going to have real change, Luke.
Well, there's some instances where even the particular story that I'm highlighting right now showed how FBI agents were seeing body camera footage that was so graphic, they decided to arrest a police officer after, of course, he was caught, again, bragging about it, but also most importantly here, again, lying about it on police reports, which, again, is a crime. Very rarely do police officers get held accountable? But when they do deserve to have a spotlight brought on them that, hey, there is some accountability and it should be cheered on. But the rest of the accountability is on you as an individual, especially your power to film interactions with police officers respectfully. It's an extremely stressful job. But when I get pulled over, I don't feel safe. And if you feel safe after you're being pulled over by a police officer, you must be a special kind of stupid. Let's just be honest here. And this is why we need a bigger discussion about law enforcement in this country, because all of the events that we just talked about were literally from this month. So very, very important stories. This is why we're covering them. This is why we're doing something different than, of course, the mainstream media does not do. And if you guys want to see that, you have to incentivize it, not only with your clicks, with you sharing this video, but also with your dollars. Voting with your dollars is extremely important. We could use all the help we could get, especially on wearechange.org/donate, wearechange.org/donate. If it wasn't for you, these videos would not be possible. And that's why I end every single broadcast. Well, not every single broadcast, but I try to end every single broadcast by saying, love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.